Wow, 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 people. Newcastle United have spoken out. Paul Mitchell has spoken out. We are going to dissect everything he has said to the written press. Yes, hello everyone. We have quite a few bits to get through. You're going to hear everything that Paul Mitchell has said. We're going to kick straight off with it. Do Newcastle United want to keep a hold of Eddie Howe? This is what he said.
You want Eddie Howe as our head coach for as long as we can, but we also recognise we're on a journey, and we also recognise his quality and his potential as well. I know being a guy scared of interest from any of our staff members, especially our head coach, and especially from the level of organisation that is the FA. The way I look at interest is that it's proof that someone's doing a really good job. It's a recognition of the 2.5 years he's had here and the job he did at Bournemouth. It's fair recognition.
Look, I don't think it's any secret that Newcastle United want to keep Eddie Howe. He's talented, and yes, a lot of people might say he's not going to take the club to the next level, what have you, and he's never won a major trophy, but you look at what he's done with Bournemouth, you look at what he's doing with Newcastle at the minute, he's doing a fantastic job. And no doubt, if he stays with Newcastle a long time, I predict that he'll win a trophy at Newcastle. Moving on to the big stuff, which is the transfers. It's been the talk of every Newcastle fan, without a shadow of a doubt. He criticises the regime beforehand in terms of the scouting network. Doesn't really name anyone in particular, but he basically just says that Newcastle's transfer policy / scout network just isn't fit for purpose.
I think it's difficult coming in a predefined strategy. Should our scouting and recruitment be driven more extensively with a wider reaching net? It definitely should, because this is becoming a really nuanced space now. When you can't just capitally fund everything every year and buy loads of players at peak age and peak price, of course it needs to be. And that's the responsibility of me, the scouting team, and Eddie. Is it fit for purpose? Not last winter gone. The winter before that. Is it fit for purpose in the modern game? Because other clubs that have adopted a different approach over time, with more intelligent, more data informed than we are, actually prospered in this window. That's where we have to grow to be now.
And this is fair play to Paul Mitchell, because you're speaking to the written press for the first time, and a lot of fans have been disappointed with the way the transfer window has gone. Obviously, there's nothing from Darren Eales as of yet, so hopefully he comes out and speaks, hopefully on an interview. But obviously, he blames more or less the way that the club's structure was set up, and also he touches upon the PSR stuff next. Very interesting what he says. Listen to this.
You look at the money that we've invested up until this point, 250 million net over the last 2.5 years. Was our model in place to be able to spend more to the levels we would have liked to enhance a team? I don't think it was. Because we haven't sold a player during that time, barring what we are forced to do through PSR. There definitely has to be more strategic approach that we haven't had in the last 2.5 years. I'll know whether we've done a good job in 5 years' time.
No, he's not a fan, put it that way. He's not a fan of PSR, and obviously Newcastle can't go crazy and spend money. We know this, but you mentioned that we haven't sold a player. Well, we have. We've sold two, actually, Chris Wood and saint-maximin in the last 2.5 years. But I get where he's coming from. I get where he's coming from. But the next one is probably the most juicy part of the whole interview that he's had, and it's about Marc Geuhi. You need to listen to this if you haven't heard it.
We had a player as the key core target. We were still in dialogue all the way through, but Eddie was very clear, and it's not up to me after 7 weeks to say, we'll do this, we'll do that, because I'm in a supporting role. There were other targets. Could there be more? I would say potentially. But Eddie was very clear that you had to feel comfortable that the person added value, because we really have good players. That's why we ended up where we did. And he's smart. He was engaged in all the conversations about PSR, spend, cost, cash flow. He's a smart head coach that has the capacity to be kept updated on those conversations. And that was the decision he took. It was that player, or he felt that he was comfortable with the quality that we have. It's about setting precedents. To the market, we will pay fair value for the right profile. It shouldn't be misconceived as a lack of ambition if we just spend once again. But we become accountable to that by fines and points deductions, and that isn't a good leadership, and you're being negligent.
Wow. So from what Paul Mitchell is basically saying there, he's telling me that Eddie Howe wants this player or effectively no one else. Yes, he's mentioned that there's other targets, but are you getting those targets just for the sake of bringing them in, or they're actually going to improve? Paul Mitchell literally says there that Eddie Howe was after a certain target, which we all know it's Marc Geuhi. He doesn't technically name him, but we know that it's Marc Geuhi. Palace have already come out and said that. Simon Paris has said that. And Eddie Howe's basically said it doesn't improve what we've got. Now, on that, you look at our centre-backs, if everybody's fit, Fabian Schär, you've got Sven Botman, you've got Jamal Lascelles, Emil Krafth, Alex Murphy, Dan Burn. It's not a bad bunch of centre-backs, is it? There's nobody having stinkers in there. There's nobody out of form or anything like that. Yes, 2 of them are injured, but by the time they come back, and if it was just to bring another number in, it doesn't make sense. I agree with him on that. However, is it being naive just to stick to one player? It was also very interesting what he said of being held at ransom for one player going up and up and up for the bid. So we know that Newcastle have the money. We know that we can spend it in January. I think the board have got to go out and get that. But it's transparency, and that's all we ask as fans at the club. Speak to us about what's going on with the club. So Eddie Howe wanted him. Newcastle didn't go and get him. They didn't want to break the bank. Maybe they can't. But should have Newcastle looked elsewhere? But Mitchell goes on to talk about, again, like the big six, the super clubs, your Barcelona's, your Real Madrid's. Doesn't name them exactly, but calls them super clubs. Newcastle should be the market for scouting to be much bigger. There can't be in just one market. This is what he said about that.
That goes for the scouting as well. I think good players are becoming harder to find because scouting is so competitive. But I think Eddie recognises good players, and he also recognises this club is evolving to be bigger and bigger and bigger. If you look at the super clubs, their infrastructure, their recruitment, they don't just look at one market only. They have a wider scouting and recruitment network. I think Eddie is smart enough to understand, and he definitely is, that to go to the next level, that you have to do is to diversify. Otherwise, you just stay local and retire. I think our ambition is much greater than that.
And lastly, talks about the communication between the two, Mitchell and Eddie Howe. Do they get on? How's the working relationship? And he admits that he speaks to Eddie Howe literally every day, sometimes for an hour a day, which is quite a lot if you consider that. But this is what he said about it.
And contrary to your opinion, we speak every night, more or less, and every day to a minimum of once on all different topics. I think this idea that me and Eddie haven't spoken all the way through the transfer window is false. All the way right until the last minute, he was fully updated and involved. We speak literally an hour a night. If we weren't able to physically communicate, we'll use WhatsApp. My idea, rightly or wrongly, was to over-communicate. My wife doesn't get that. I felt that was necessary at this stage of the relationship. He was kept very updated on the transfer window.
So there you go, everyone. That is your roundup of what Paul Mitchell has said. I want to know what you think in the comments below, because it's pretty much, I wouldn't call it explosive. That's probably the over the top, but the club have come out and talked to the press. Now we know a little bit more what's happened in the window. Is it Mitchell? Is it Eales? You point the finger all at one. You point a little bit towards Eddie Howe as well, because he wanted a certain player, and obviously Eddie Howe's already said that he's frustrated. Personally, for me, it should have been a right winger, but that wasn't really talked about in that as well. And obviously the club want to keep Eddie Howe, of course they do. It's just very, very interesting, isn't it? Some of the stuff that you're saying. Let me know in the comments how you feel about it. But that's it from me. Tell everyone. Watch this, Dean. Bye bye.